How's it going, everyone? So welcome back. This is going to be our final part of the Highpoly, and this is just going to be a really short lesson on how to decimate this and make the poly count way lower, and how we're going to bring this all directly back into Maya. So I'm just going to do a couple examples and then cut the video there. You'll notice really quickly as I'm going through this that we're pretty much doing the exact same thing over and over again. But before we do anything, this is kind of a destructive workflow, so we won't be able to undo a lot of things. So let's just go ahead and save this, and I'm just going to call this one _des for decimation. Save that, and it might take a minute or so, but the reason we want to do that is because we're kind of more or less destroying the not the smoothness, but the kind of distribution of polygons on here, and just making it as optimized as possible, but in doing so making it so it's something we can't really work with. And I like to have one file where I can work with it if I need to change certain parts, and then one version where everything's decimated in case I need to just quickly get those back. So let's go ahead and just do an example. This guy here is probably a pretty good piece to work on. So let's look at our wireframe by hitting Shift F, and we can see it's pretty crazy. We're at about 8 million polygons here. So what we're going to want to do to reduce this by a ton is to go to Z plugin, decimation master, and then we have to pre-process current. And what this is going to do is kind of analyze the mesh that you currently have selected. You could pre-process all, but I find that takes really long and is more prone to crashing. So I just recommend sort of doing this as a case-by-case thing. But you can kind of see up here it is analyzing our mesh, and it'll probably take a little bit of time to get through all of that. But yep, it should start up with a bar and go all the way through. And we're going to have to do this for every single part. So some of these larger parts, like this one is definitely the second largest one here. It'll take a while, but some of the smaller parts like the screws and whatnot will be pretty much instant. And what we're doing is just analyzing this, and then we're going to be able to decimate it to the percentage of polygons that we want. So you'll be able to understand that a little bit more in just a second. But saying that this is 8 million polygons, I can say, hey, I only want it to be 5% of that. It'll do its best to reorganize the geometry to be as optimized as possible with 5% of this poly count. And that's what we're going to be bringing back into Maya. So I'm just going to let this load out, and I will continue talking once this is done. Okay, so our bar is all finished up. So what we can do now is go to Z plugin again. And where it says the percentage here, we can sort of adjust how much we want this to be decimated by. We might have to try a few different times to sort of see what we're going for, but let's just start with like a 4.5 and then just hit decimate current. And you'll see in just a second that it completely changes our poly count from 8 million to 364,000, which is still a lot. But I'm mostly just trying to see if we can notice any artifacting. Like if we go to some of these rounder points, can we see individual polygons? Like right here we can see it a little bit, but when we smooth it we should be fine. So I'm going to undo that and say we could probably push this to 4, decimate current, and we don't even notice a change at all, right? So this is our decimated version. It's pretty destructive, so that's why I like to save a different version of it. But we can just go to the bottom now and hit obj out, which is going to export this to the place that our Maya meshes were sort of being exported to. We can go back to Maya, and we have this Zbrush layer we made. Let's just go ahead and hide that, and we'll just start importing everything into the scene here. And we can just sort of grab our if this isn't working, we can just sort of grab our export tool, press this, and hit the import button. And what that'll do is it'll just sort of load everything in. It's going to take a little bit longer because we're dealing with pretty high poly counts, but there we go. We have our high poly piece inside of Maya. We do by default bring it in with hard edges, so you just want to click it, soften the edges on this. There we go. And then when we zoom in, it looks exactly like how we had it inside of Zbrush. And what's nice about this workflow is like, yeah, if any one piece we don't really like and we want to go back and fix it, we can go back to that Zbrush file, adjust that one piece, we have the ZBrush version of it here that we can just sort of re-import if we really mess something up, but it's just kind of like a safety net for every single piece. But anyways, we have this guy in now. It's a good thing to sort of smooth it as you go, and just sort of get into a rhythm here. So I'm just going to make a new layer, calling this HP for Highpoly. Let's just make it red. And now we just sort of have a new layer to kind of organize all this stuff. I'm not going to do a ton of these, because like that's pretty much all there is to it. But it's like, let's say I want to do these screws. We'll just keep these guys consistent together. It's just going to be the same thing pretty much. Let's go ahead and pre-process current. It's just going to load. Like I said, it's a lot faster with things that are at a reasonable poly count to begin with. And then since this is already a pretty low poly count, if I were to decimate to 4%, it's going to be pretty low quality, so we're not going to want that. With something like this, I might even want to just do like 40%, and you don't really notice a difference there. If you start noticing a difference, you should probably like increase the percentage. But other than that, I'm just going to go ahead and export that. Go back here and hit import. It's going to take a second to load it in, but there we go. We got the screws in. Soften those guys and add them to our layer. So that's pretty much all there is to it. We're going to have to go through and bring every single thing back into Maya this way. That's why I'm thinking in the long run, when you're doing projects like this, it might be best to just sort of make maybe like 5 to 10 unique screws and just sort of place them all in at this stage afterwards, so you don't have to do this as you go, because there's a lot of screws that we're going to have to be bringing back since we did it this way. But either way, I'm just going to sort of go ahead and do a pass of bringing every single thing back. But generally, save a new file. It's easy to organize if you're going through your subtools from top to bottom. If you want to double check if you've done something or not, look at the wireframe. That will usually give it away. And then other than that, when you're in Maya, just sort of smooth as you go and add to a Highpoly layer. That's pretty much it. Hopefully that covers everything. I'm going to stop recording this now and actually go through and do this all off camera, because that's everything I could possibly go over. And the next part, we're going to be diving into our low poly. Most of our work there is just going to be cleanup work, but there's still a lot to keep in mind and a lot to go over. So yeah, it's going to be cool to see this entire Highpoly kind of in one place though, so I'm looking forward to that. But besides that, that'll wrap it up for the Highpoly. Maybe I'll do a little recording after this showing it off all inside of Maya, just to sort of have a proper conclusion. It feels weird to end the Highpoly looking at this. So yeah, I'll see you guys in a couple seconds with the full thing inside of Maya. But for now, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in a bit.